On April 19, 1995, exactly 2 years after Waco, McVeigh detonates a truck bomb at the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City. 168 people die, including 19 children. Hundreds more are injured. It remains the deadliest act of domestic terrorism in U.S. history. Even today, extremist groups in the United States still invoke Ruby Ridge and Waco as justification for anti-government action. August 22nd, 1992, Ruby Ridge, Idaho. FBI sniper Lon Horiuchi has Randy Weaver in his crosshairs, 200 yards away. Weaver is running for his cabin with his friend Kevin Harris. Horiuchi fires and hits Weaver in the arm. They keep running. Horiuchi fires again. The bullet passes through the cabin door. Behind that door, Vicki Weaver is standing, holding her 10-month-old baby. The round hits her in the head and kills her instantly. The infant, covered in her mother's blood, keeps screaming. For the next 9 days, the family won't let anybody remove the body. A 14-year-old boy and a federal marshal are already dead from an exchange of gunfire the day before. And at this time, a young Gulf War veteran named Timothy McVeigh is watching all of this unfold on the television news cycle, becoming radicalized and planning revenge. I'm Charles Denyer, and this is Threat Level Red, where we expose the threats, the attacks, the operations, and the dangers that shape our world and threaten our security. Today's episode, Ruby Ridge, the shootout that radicalized militias.
Welcome to Threat Level Red, a Charles Denyer Productions podcast. Every week, Charles brings his real-world expertise to the front lines of America's most pressing threats: cyber attacks, extremist networks, rogue states, terrorism, economic instability, systemic breakdowns, and so much more. From the digital battleground to the streets of America, no threat is left uncovered. No spin, no filters, just intel.
To understand how an 11-day standoff in rural Idaho became the opening shot of America's modern domestic terrorism era, you need to know three things. First, Randy Weaver was a former Green Beret who became a religious fundamentalist believing the apocalypse was imminent. He and his wife Vicki did not trust the government and wanted to live off-grid. In 1984, they built a cabin on Ruby Ridge, about 40 miles from the Canadian border. The ATF became aware of Weaver in 1986 when he attended meetings of the Aryan Nations, a white supremacist group. In 1989, Weaver sold 2 sawed-off shotguns to a man he met at these meetings, who turned out to be an undercover ATF informant who had pressured him to modify the firearms below legal length. That sale would be the catalyst for the Ruby Ridge standoff. Second, Weaver was indicted in June 1990 and released pending trial, but due in part to a clerical error notifying him of the correct trial date, he failed to appear in court. A bench warrant was issued. According to law enforcement, Weaver retreated to his cabin and threatened to shoot any officers who tried to arrest him. For 18 months, federal marshals surveyed the property, planning a way on how to arrest him. During this period, the Weavers found hidden cameras and their paranoia absolutely escalated. The family armed themselves constantly. What should have been a simple arrest for a minor weapons charge became a standoff waiting to absolutely explode. And third, here's what made this catastrophic. When the FBI hostage rescue team arrived on August 22nd, they operated under revised rules of engagement that allowed agents to shoot any armed adult male on sight, whether or not that person posed an imminent threat. This was a radical departure from standard FBI deadly force policy. FBI agents described the rules as a green light to shoot on sight. Constitutional protections? Forgotten. Due process? Suspended. The government was about to execute its own citizens on a mountain in Idaho, and the consequences would echo for decades. Now, here's how it all went down. August 21st, 1992, Friday morning. 6 U.S. Marshals in camouflage, equipped with night vision goggles and M16 rifles, are conducting surveillance near the Weaver cabin. Their mission: find suitable locations to ambush and arrest Randy Weaver away from his family. The Weaver's dog detects the marshals and starts barking. 14-year-old Sammy Weaver, Randy, and family friend Kevin Harris chase after the dog. What happens next is highly disputed to this day, but for brevity, here's how it unfolded. One marshal shoots the dog. Sammy fires at the marshals. In the ensuing gunfight, Sammy Weaver is shot in the back and killed. Kevin Harris then shoots and kills Deputy U.S. Marshal William Deegan, a dead federal officer, a dead 14-year-old boy, and a dead yellow Labrador retriever. The family retreats to the cabin with Sammy's body. The marshals call for backup. Ruby Ridge has just become an explosive national trauma. Then, on August 22nd, early morning, the FBI hostage rescue team arrives. Hundreds of federal agents surge into the area. They're briefed with the revised rules of engagement. Here's the critical detail. The FBI had not yet made any surrender demand when sniper Lon Horiuchi took his position 200 yards from the cabin. Shortly after, Randy, his daughter Sarah, and Kevin Harris leave the cabin to visit Sammy's body in a nearby shed. Horiuchi opens fire, with the first shot hitting Randy Weaver in the arm. The three run back toward the cabin. Horiuchi fires again, aiming for Harris, but tragically, the bullet strikes Vicki Weaver in the face as she holds the cabin door open with one hand while cradling her infant daughter with the other. She is killed instantly. FBI sniper Horiuchi later claims he did not know Vicki was standing behind the door. For the next 9 days, the family refuses to surrender. Sarah Weaver crawls around her mother's blanket-covered body to get food and water for the survivors. Outside, hundreds of protesters arrive, furious at the government. The nation watches. The FBI realizes they've created martyrs. Bo Gritz, a decorated Special Forces soldier, arrives and convinces the family to surrender. On August 30th, Kevin Harris surrenders for medical treatment. On August 31st, Randy and his 3 daughters finally come out. Randy and Kevin are indicted. Harris for murdering Deputy Deegan, Weaver for aiding and abetting. The trial begins. Defense attorney Jerry Spence exposes the government story piece by piece, the revised rules of engagement, the contradictory testimony. FBI Commander Richard Rogers admits under oath he never considered what Idaho state laws might apply. I don't operate under state law. I operate under federal law, which supersedes state law. That's what he said. The jury is absolutely appalled. As a result, Harris is acquitted of all charges. Weaver is convicted only of failing to appear in court and violating bail conditions. The government's case collapses, and then the investigations begin. The Department of Justice prepares an extensive 542-page report concluding that the shot that killed Vicki Weaver violated deadly force policy and contravened the Constitution. An FBI investigation leads to minor punishment for 14 agency employees. FBI Director Louis Freeh even testifies before Congress, calling it a tragedy built on one misstatement of fact exaggerated to another one, into a huge pile of information that was just dead wrong. In a strange twist of irony, in 1997, that very sniper, Lon Horiuchi, he's charged with manslaughter for killing Vicki Weaver. Now, a judge dismisses the case, claiming federal agents cannot be charged for actions taken in the line of duty. However, the ruling is later overturned, but then again, no further charges are filed. In 1995, the federal government settles the Weaver family's wrongful death lawsuit for $3.1 million, $1 million for each surviving daughter, and $100,000 for Randy Weaver. The government never admits wrongdoing, but the damage is done. Now, here's where it gets truly dangerous, and how so? Well, anti-government militia groups explodes from 220 in 1995 to more than 850 by the end of 1996. Ruby Ridge became the rallying cry. The government killed a mother holding a baby. They shot a 14-year-old boy in the back. They operated under rules that violated the Constitution. For the far right, this proves everything they believed. The federal government is at war with its own citizens.
The chaos in downtown Oklahoma City did indeed resemble Beirut after what police believe to be a 1,200-pound car bomb ripped through the 9-story federal building shortly after 9 o'clock this morning. More than 500 people were already in their offices, and at least 50 children.
Now enter Timothy McVeigh, a Gulf War veteran. He becomes radicalized by Ruby Ridge and the subsequent Waco siege in 1993. McVeigh states in open court that he was motivated to bomb the federal building in Oklahoma City because of Ruby Ridge and Waco, which he saw as a government at war with its very own citizens. On April 19, 1995, exactly 2 years after Waco, McVeigh detonates a truck bomb at the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City. 168 people die, including 19 children. Hundreds more are injured. It remains the deadliest act of domestic terrorism in U.S. history. Even today, extremist groups in the United States still invoke Ruby Ridge and Waco as justification for anti-government action. Many see the January 6, 2021 insurrection as serving a similar galvanizing purpose for militia movements, conspiracy theorists, and violent extremists. In fact, extremists like Dylan Roof and others have cited McVeigh and Ruby Ridge in their manifestos and justifications. The template established at Ruby Ridge, government overreach, martyrdom, radicalization, revenge, continued to fuel domestic terrorism 3 decades later.
Everything in me wanted to run down the hill and try and, protect my brother, because I knew he was down there, and I'd always been his big sister. I'd always been his protector. So there's part of me that just wanted to take off down the driveway and make sure he was okay. He said that Sam was gone.
So what really happened here at Ruby Ridge? Well, this was a cascade of failures of the U.S. government, each one making the next inevitable. Start with the ATF's entrapment of Weaver, pressuring him to modify legal firearms to create a prosecutable offense. Then add the clerical error on the trial date. Then 18 months of surveillance instead of a simple arrest. Then the revised rules of engagement that violated constitutional standards for deadly force. But here's the deeper truth. The FBI arrived believing they were entering an active, unprovoked firefight against U.S. Marshals. This was absolutely false. The rules of engagement were drafted in Washington well before anyone on scene assessed the actual situation. The result? A sniper authorized to shoot American citizens on sight without imminent threat, without surrender demand, and without due process. The DOJ concluded the killing of Vicki Weaver contravened the Constitution. That's government language for we executed an unarmed woman in her own home. The acquittals of Harris and Weaver on the serious charges proved the government's narrative completely fell apart under scrutiny. Look, the real lesson isn't about Randy Weaver's beliefs or weapons charges. It's about what happens when law enforcement abandons constitutional constraints in the name of operational convenience. Ruby Ridge proved that federal overreach doesn't just violate individual rights, it radicalizes entire movements. The government created more extremists than they could have imagined with their fiasco at Ruby Ridge. Timothy McVeigh, again, he killed 168 people, citing Ruby Ridge as justification. How many lives would have been saved if those marshals had simply arrested Weaver in town, away from his family, during those 18 months of surveillance? Here's what should keep you awake at night. Ruby Ridge didn't just end in tragedy. It established a pattern that still fuels domestic terrorism today. A government action perceived as tyrannical becomes wall-to-wall media coverage. That coverage transforms the perpetrators into martyrs, observers radicalize, violence follows, and then the cycle begins again. And here's the ironic twist. Randy Weaver himself testified before the Senate in 1995 saying, if he had to do it all over again, I would have come down the mountain for the court appearance. Even he recognized the catastrophic cost of the standoff. The question is not whether there will be another Ruby Ridge-style incident that radicalizes another Timothy McVeigh. The question is whether we've learned anything that would prevent it. Based on the explosion of militia activity over the past decade, the polarization of American politics, and the continuing worship of Ruby Ridge in extremist circles, the answer appears to be no. At the time of this podcast episode, Ruby Ridge happened almost 34 years ago. The movement it spawned is stronger now than it's ever been. The fuse that lit in Idaho in August 1992, well, it's still burning. Thanks for listening. I'm your host, Charles Denyer. This is Threat Level Red.
Threat Level Red is a Charles Denyer Productions podcast. For more information, visit charlesdenyer.com to learn more about current and upcoming podcasts and episodes, current and future book publications, professional services offered by Charles, and much more. All opinions expressed are those of the host and do not reflect the official positions of any government agency, military branch, or national security organization.